Hollywood doesn't discover foreign acts by accident. It doesn't stumble into global relevance. It watches quietly, calculates risk, then moves only when momentum becomes unavoidable. In 2025, that moment arrived for SB19. Not through a viral fluke. Not through a Western cosign campaign. But through a series of signals Hollywood understands better than fans do: elite endorsements, measurable market behavior, live performance credibility, and narrative control. This isn't about popularity, it's about viability. And once Hollywood starts paying attention, it never looks the same again. If you believe SB19's moment deserves serious conversation, not just celebration, like this video. And subscribe for coverage that treats their rise with the depth it actually deserves. There's a persistent myth that Hollywood chases trends, that executives scroll TikTok, spot something viral, and rush to sign it. That's not how power works. Hollywood doesn't chase noise. It validates leverage. By the time attention becomes public, the decision was already made behind closed doors. The industry watches three things with almost surgical precision. First, live performance credibility. Can the act deliver under pressure, in unfamiliar rooms, without studio protection? Viral numbers collapse the moment an artist hits a global stage and can't command it. Second, fan conversion power. Not follower counts, but behavior. Ticket sales, repeat engagement, and the ability to move fans across platforms and time zones. Third, narrative ownership. Who controls the story? Acts that rely on labels or trends are replaceable. Acts that control their identity are investments. This pattern repeats across every global crossover. Latin pop didn't explode overnight. Labels watched touring data and diaspora loyalty for years. K-pop wasn't discovered in the West, it proved discipline, scalability, and fan infrastructure. Afrobeats followed the same path: quiet validation, then sudden dominance. That's where SB19 sits in 2025. Not in the viral phase. Not in the novelty phase. In the phase Hollywood respects most, the moment when the numbers make sense, the performances hold, and the story belongs to the artists. Attention is still quiet. Which means it's already serious. For years, SB19 existed in a blind spot Hollywood created itself. Early success was dismissed as regional, not because of quality, but because of bias. Western gatekeepers have long struggled to read Southeast Asia, not due to lack of data, but lack of imagination. If it didn't fit existing frameworks like K-pop or Latin pop, it was easier to ignore. Language played a role. Geography played a bigger one. And the PPOP label, while culturally important, unintentionally boxed SB19 into a category Hollywood didn't know how to monetize yet. To an industry built on familiar pipelines, unfamiliar markets feel risky, even when the numbers say otherwise. Social media virality didn't help as much as fans think. Hollywood has seen too many viral stars disappear. Views don't guarantee touring power. Trends don't guarantee longevity. SB19 needed something stronger than visibility, they needed leverage. That turning point came when they stopped chasing recognition and started building infrastructure, tighter live performances, clearer artistic identity, and a fanbase that didn't just stream, but showed up. Instead of asking to be noticed, SB19 created proof that attention was overdue. By 2025, the equation flipped. Hollywood didn't discover SB19. It finally caught up. What once looked regional now looks scalable. What once felt unfamiliar now looks inevitable. And invisibility turned into interest the moment SB19 proved they didn't need permission to win. Every breakout year looks sudden from the outside. Inside the industry, it's always the result of convergence. What changed for SB19 in 2025 wasn't popularity, it was signal alignment. For the first time, every metric Hollywood actually trusts began pointing in the same direction. Live stages shifted first. SB19 wasn't just performing well, they were performing consistently across different rooms, sound systems, and audiences. Festivals replaced fan-only environments. International bookings replaced safe markets. And with each appearance, the margin for error shrank, and SB19 kept clearing it. Then came the rooms fans never see. Industry-only showcases. Private conversations between agents and promoters. Quiet inquiries from executives who don't clap or post, but remember everything. Momentum doesn't trend online in these spaces. It circulates through calendars, emails, and contract drafts. This is why timing matters more than talent. Talent without infrastructure is noise. Talent that peaks too early burns out. But when readiness meets opportunity at the same moment, doors open fast, and permanently. 2025 wasn't coincidence. It was the year SB19's live credibility, fan conversion, and narrative control converged under global visibility. The industry didn't suddenly notice them. It finally received enough confirmation to act. And once that happens, attention doesn't rewind, it accelerates. Every global act has a moment where perception shifts, not for fans, but for decision makers. For SB19, that moment came through a defining performance era that quietly recalibrated how the industry evaluated them. The first thing executives noticed wasn't hype, it was vocal stability. No shortcuts. No backing track dependency. Clean delivery under pressure, across demanding arrangements. That alone separates performers from contenders. Then came choreography discipline, not flash, but precision. Movement that enhanced the music instead of competing with it. But the real shift happened in crowd command. SB19 didn't perform to the audience, they controlled the room. Energy rose and fell on cue. Silence landed where it mattered. That's not rehearsed, it's earned. Finally, camera literacy sealed it. Global stages aren't just watched, they're framed. SB19 understood where the lens was, when to pull back, when to strike. The performance translated across screens, cultures, and platforms without losing impact. Fans reacted with emotion. Executives reacted with calculation. One saw pride. The other saw readiness. This wasn't spectacle. It was confirmation that SB19 could survive, and thrive, on the world's most unforgiving stages. And once that question is answered, the conversation changes forever. In Hollywood, not all validation is equal. 1 million fans can make noise. One elite endorsement can make a career. That's because the industry operates on a quiet hierarchy of trust, an internal ranking system where certain voices carry disproportionate weight. When those people speak, others don't argue. They listen. An endorsement from a respected producer, agent, festival curator, or legacy artist does something numbers never can: it reduces risk. It signals that someone with experience, reputation, and something to lose has already done the evaluation. For executives, that single signal matters more than trends, hashtags, or even charts. This is where SB19 crossed an invisible line. They were no longer interesting, a word the industry uses to delay decisions. They became investable. That shift doesn't come from popularity alone, it comes from trust. Once an insider with credibility vouches for an act, doors unlock quietly. Meetings get scheduled. Invitations appear. Opportunities that never existed suddenly feel overdue. This is reputation economics at work. Hollywood doesn't reward potential, it rewards proof filtered through trusted voices. And once those voices speak, the conversation changes permanently. SB19 is no longer being evaluated on whether they belong, but on how much the industry is willing to commit. That's the moment careers stop being speculative and start being strategic. SB19's most misunderstood strength isn't talent, it's control. They own their narrative, their sound, and their direction in a way that fundamentally changes how Hollywood evaluates them. In an industry exhausted by fragile, manufactured acts, control is no longer a threat. It's the most valuable asset on the table. For decades, boy bands followed a familiar model: external writers, imposed images, and carefully scripted personas. It worked, until it didn't. Today, Hollywood prioritizes creator-led acts because they scale better, last longer, and survive cultural shifts without constant reinvention. Control equals durability. SB19 represents that evolution. Their independence isn't rebellion, it's leverage. It means decisions are faster. Vision is clearer. And artistic identity doesn't collapse the moment market trends shift. From an industry perspective, this reduces long-term risk while increasing upside. What looks unconventional to outsiders looks efficient to executives. Acts that understand their audience, manage their brand, and evolve intentionally require less correction and fewer compromises. That's exactly what Hollywood wants next, not artists to be molded, but partners to be expanded. This is why SB19 isn't being treated as a novelty. They're being studied as a model. Not just for where global music is now, but where it's headed. And that distinction changes everything that comes next. At a certain point, regional labels stop helping, and start limiting perception. SB19 has crossed that point. What began as a P-pop story has evolved into something far more disruptive, a global act operating beyond geography. In 2025, SB19 isn't being evaluated as representation. They're being measured as competition. This shift matters because Hollywood doesn't invest in categories, it invests in lanes. And SB19 is no longer, from the Philippines, in the way the industry used to frame foreign acts. They're in the same conversation as anyone else, commanding international stages, streaming across borders, and converting audiences without translation. For labels, this changes risk models. For studios, it opens casting and soundtrack possibilities. For agencies, it signals untapped markets that can no longer be treated as secondary. SB19 isn't just succeeding despite their origin, they're proving that Southeast Asia is a source of primary talent, not future potential. That's the real breakthrough. Once an act escapes the box of representation, they stop being symbolic and start being strategic. SB19's presence reframes how global markets are prioritized, budgeted, and developed. This isn't about pride. It's about precedent. And the precedent SB19 sets is simple: Southeast Asia isn't emerging anymore. It's here. And the industry that adapts first stands to gain the most. Attention is earned. Commitment is tested. Now that SB19 has Hollywood's interest, the industry is watching something far more specific, and far more unforgiving. First, touring consistency. Not one-off successes, but sustained performance across cities, countries, and cultures. Can demand hold without novelty? Second, cross-media adaptability. Music alone isn't the end game anymore. Film roles, television appearances, and soundtrack placements reveal whether an act can live beyond the stage. Third, longevity under pressure. Global exposure amplifies everything: praise, criticism, fatigue. Hollywood watches how artists respond when momentum stops being fun and starts being heavy. Fourth, fan base sustainability. Are fans aging with the act? Supporting across projects? Showing up when the algorithm isn't pushing? This is why 2025 to 2026 is the decision window. It's when curiosity either matures into commitment or quietly fades. The difference is infrastructure, discipline, and vision. Right now, SB19 is in evaluation mode, not audition mode. Hollywood isn't asking if they're talented. It's watching to see how far they can go without losing control. Because once commitment is made, the stakes and the scale change permanently. Hollywood forgets trends. It never forgets credibility. Once an artist is logged into the industry's internal memory as reliable, capable, and scalable, that status doesn't reset, even if the spotlight fades temporarily. That's the point SB19 has reached in 2025. This is why silence now doesn't mean disinterest. In many cases, it means strategy. Decisions are being weighed privately, timelines coordinated, risks minimized. Public hype comes later. Internal confidence comes first. And that confidence, once established, is almost impossible to erase. The long-term implications are structural. Award consideration shifts from novelty categories to competitive ones. Collaborations stop being experimental and start being selective. Legacy conversations begin earlier because the industry starts thinking in decades, not cycles. Most importantly, the cost calculation has flipped. Ignoring SB19 now carries more risk than backing them. Passing on a proven global act doesn't look cautious, it looks short-sighted. And Hollywood is ruthless with institutions that miss obvious inflection points. This is why this moment can't be reversed. Momentum may slow. Visibility may fluctuate. But credibility, once earned at this level, becomes permanent. SB19 is no longer knocking on the door. They're already inside the building, and the industry knows it. SB19's rise isn't an exception. It's a case study. Not of viral luck, but of what happens when performance, discipline, and control converge at the right moment. This didn't happen because fans demanded it. It happened because the work held up under scrutiny. That distinction matters. Fan pressure can open conversations, but it can't force commitment. Only consistency does that. Only proof survives closed rooms and skeptical eyes. SB19 didn't bypass the system, they passed its hardest tests. In doing so, they exposed a larger shift, the slow collapse of Western-first dominance. Talent no longer needs to originate in traditional centers to compete at the highest level. Infrastructure, not geography, decides outcomes now. And SB19 built theirs deliberately. What they represent goes beyond music. They represent a future where global acts aren't invited, they arrive ready. Where markets once considered peripheral become essential. Where control, not compliance, defines longevity. So if Hollywood is watching SB19 now, it isn't asking if they belong. That question has already been answered. It's deciding how far they're willing to go, and how fast they're willing to follow a future that's already moving.